First of all, I would like to thank you for meeting with me in such a short note. I've been knowing you now for almost a year, and you always consistently talk about the important that how lawyers should deal with their client, and how important is the simplicity when you deliver the information with them. So I'll just give you the field and talk about it.
Okay. Yeah, it's amazing how when one starts off, and when I was a young lawyer, I thought that unless I could really find all of the complexity and nuance, I couldn't really be a good lawyer. And that the whole purpose to show your worth as a lawyer was to be able to delve into and use the big words and the big concepts to impress everyone. The older I've gotten, the more I've realized that that tends to be one of the failings of the young, and that really the most important thing for a lawyer, certainly a practicing lawyer, but also for a law student, is to be able to do two things. The first thing is to understand the context in which you're working, and that requires you to know your client. And every client will be different, every situation will be different. Lawyers don't work like philosophers in an abstract world that doesn't exist. And when lawyers acquire the bad habit of pretending that theirs is the most important world and it's an abstract world, the likelihood that they're going to make mistakes just increases. So the most important thing is to know that law is always meant to serve. It serves the state, it serves people, it serves society, and it serves your clients as well. And once you understand that law is a servant for social order, for the needs of your client and the state, then it becomes much easier to step back from it and understand that, as a servant, what should be at the center? What should be at the center is your client and your client's relationship to the law, which means that it becomes critically important for you to know your client and their context. By know your client, of course, I don't mean that you know what they were like when they were 5 years old and that they like poetry, although that can be useful too, but to understand them and the context in which they're operating in order for you to serve them through law better. The second thing, of course, and then I'll end with this, I know this is a long answer, is that law itself is not meant to be complicated. The more complicated you make law, the more likely it is you're going to make a mistake. At its core, law is always very simple. And so for the lawyer to understand law, you have to be able to understand it in a way that you can explain it to your 90-year-old grandparents.
Okay.
And if you can't do that, then you're missing something.
Okay. So my question here is, why should we make the information so simple to the client, while they need to understand the work that we want to do? So I think what I mean. So if we wanted to talk to our client about their cases, so I think the client need to better understand what's going on, like step by step, not just that in general.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Even the most beautiful and complicated palace is built from the simplest materials that you put together. If you don't understand the simple materials, how can you possibly build the palace? How can you get your client to help you build that? And that's really the essential point. If you can explain it in ways that are simple enough for your client to understand, you will find out that your client can then be much more helpful to you, because then they'll be able to provide you better the information you need in order to help your client help himself.
Okay.
And so, of course, you're going to construct, most legal problems tend to be somewhat complicated, but they're complicated only because of the number of bricks that you're putting together. The bricks themselves are not. So your ability to walk your client through from the foundation to the next layer is critical in order for you to be able to function well. At the end, you step back and your client steps back and he says, oh, wow, this is really interesting and intricate. I didn't realize that.
Okay.
But you didn't, because I helped you lay all of the stones. I put the plaster on. I painted. I drew the design. And at the end of the day, it's just beautiful and complex. But it was simple each stage.
Okay. So how, as a lawyer, can build this skill?
That requires a tremendous amount of discipline.
Okay.
A tremendous amount of discipline. You'll discover that the less you know, the more you take refuge in complication. Because actually, when a lawyer starts speaking complication to you, then in the back of your mind, you know that he does not know what he's talking about. To really understand something is to be able to reduce it to simplicity. And so for a lawyer to better themselves is a constant exercise and a challenge to the lawyer to see, all right, here I see this thing. How can I reduce it? That, in doing that, you teach yourself and you deepen your own knowledge of the materials that you need in order to serve your clients. So it's a challenge that a lawyer, I still do this. I've been working for 600 years and I still do this. I look at a problem and I say, I haven't simplified it enough. I don't understand what's really going on. And the less I'm able to do it, the more study I know I need to make in order to make it right. So that's the point. It's not because it is simple. It's because in the process of simplification, you actually deepen your own knowledge of what you're doing.
Okay. Do you think we need these skills when we deal with different lawyers, like in our company or in different law firms?
Now we get to the issue of strategy. Yeah. It's a complicated question, but it's actually a relatively simple answer.
Okay.
I think that we as lawyers are in the business of serving our clients and helping our colleagues. I do not believe that as lawyers we owe any duty to help those against whom or with whom our client is interacting.
Okay.
That's why they have gone off and searched their own counsel. With respect to other lawyers, I go, you have the same opportunities I did. If you are able to do this, great. If you're not, it's going to cost your client money.
Mm-hmm. Simple as that.
As simple as that.
So, and my final question is, what do you think the most important skills that law students need to build in these days?
The most important skill, you're going to laugh at me.
Why?
The most important skill is something we used to take for granted years ago, but we can't anymore, is to learn to read. To learn to read. We have gotten so used to, over the last 20 years, of reading smaller and smaller bursts of knowledge that we are now almost incapable of reading big, long things. Now, this is something that may get me in trouble or not. One of the ways in which you practice reading is go back to a culture's classics, the core books, and see if you can actually read the old stuff. So what I'll do in the West is that I will sometimes suggest to students that, depending on their views, they either go back and try to read and understand the Bible, old, long passages with complications, or old classical literature, and see if they can begin to understand that. Because once we lose the ability to piece together complicated writings, it makes it impossible for you to actually approach, one, the complications that law is, and two, the process of then taking that complication and breaking it down into its simple form. So it all comes back, right? And every culture has a set of core foundational reading that really helps with the practice of understanding the written word and the spoken word. And that, I think, is the most critical skill for a lawyer.
So if you want to start your law career, the most important thing is understand how to read.
Read carefully. and to extract meaning from words. That becomes critical. And the better you are at doing that, the more power you're going to have over your opponents.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Information.
You're welcome. This was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right.